The silence of the Galactic Council's massive, marble-like hall was shattered by a sharp, explosive rumble. The ground quaked beneath the ancient stone floors as every attendee's eyes snapped toward the massive holoscreen in the center of the room, where the Earth's planet-wide broadcast was now visible. On it, a solitary human figure stood, his back turned to the screen, as he calmly adjusted the white and gold sash of his diplomatic attire. "I am Ambassador Dorian Clark," the voice boomed over the comms, smooth and confident. "And you are about to witness the greatest mistake the galaxy has ever made." The camera zoomed in on the human's face, capturing the solemnity in his eyes. Not the face of someone who feared the power of the Galactic Council or the mighty species that had once bent the galaxy to their will, but someone who had stood, time and again, against an unbeatable foe. Today, however, the true power of humanity would be revealed. The council chamber buzzed, murmurs rising to a crescendo. Representatives of over 100 different species exchanged glances, their minds spinning with disbelief. A human diplomat, one among countless, was making such a bold declaration? How foolish! But they did not know Clark as the humans did. They had no idea what he had just triggered. "What's the meaning of this, Ambassador Clark?" A deep, gravelly voice boomed from the speaker's podium. High Chancellor Verith, the insectoid leader of the galaxy's most powerful faction, stared at the holo. His 6 eyes flickered in rapid succession, signaling growing unease. "You speak of mistakes. What mistake could a species as insignificant as yours possibly?" The transmission cut abruptly. The screens flickered, the council chamber bathed in darkness for several moments. The sound of alarmed gasps rose from the delegates. "Impossible," Verith muttered, swiping furiously at the council controls. The screens returned to life, but the broadcast had shifted. Now, the entire surface of Earth was ablaze, visible through hundreds of satellites and cameras. A blinding light radiated from every major city, every military installation. The Earth itself seemed to pulse with an eerie glow, an energy so intense that even the sophisticated sensors of the Council couldn't decipher its origin. "Consider this your warning," Clark's voice rang out again, steady and unyielding. "Earth will not kneel. We never surrender." The transmission cut once more. Silence dominated the hall, but the tension was palpable. The Council had assumed they were untouchable. They had ridiculed humanity as mere children on the galactic stage, a species bound to their homeworld by their primitive instincts. But now, the very core of Earth was releasing something that made even the most seasoned ambassadors of the galaxy's finest species tremble. As the minutes ticked by, no one dared to speak. The human's words echoed in the vast chamber like a curse, a taunt. In the far reaches of space, Commander Alex Reynaldo, leader of the Earth Defense Fleet, stood by a massive viewport on her flagship, Vigilant. She watched the ripples of light from the broadcast stretch out like shockwaves across the stars. But instead of fear, a quiet determination settled in her chest. She had known something was coming. From the moment humanity had been thrust into this galactic war, she'd felt the weight of it. This wasn't just about military might, it was about something far deeper, something no alien race could understand. Humanity's spirit. Their refusal to yield. To give in. "Commander, the fleet is ready for your orders," her first officer, Lieutenant Kieran Clark, said, his voice low but confident. He had been her right hand since the beginning of the war, his sharp mind and loyalty invaluable. He stepped forward, his face hard as granite. "Prepare for the counterstrike. The Council underestimated us for the last time. It's time they learn what happens when they cross humanity." Alex turned, her eyes steely. She knew the odds, knew the risks. The Council would send everything they had, an overwhelming force of starships and dreadnoughts, but none of that mattered. They couldn't defeat a force driven by survival, by a race that had never known defeat without rising again. Back on the Council's planet, the representatives scrambled to respond. Verith rose from his podium, his posture now sharp, his demeanor combative. "This display changes nothing," he shouted. "We will crush them. Their very existence is—" "No, High Chancellor," a voice cut through his bluster. This one was smooth, almost soothing, but cold as the void of space. It was Ambassador Lyra Kor, a human, no, an ex-human, turned representative from a neutral planet. She stepped forward, the room falling silent as she spoke. What you're seeing isn't just a show of force. It's the beginning of something far worse than you can imagine. The chamber was quiet as the weight of her words settled in. Her pale blue eyes turned toward Vareth with a knowing glance, a small, almost imperceptible smile curling her lips. It's called unity, High Chancellor. And it will be humanity's last lesson to the Council. The Earth Defense Fleet was mobilizing faster than even Alex Reynaldo had anticipated. It had been less than 24 hours since Dorian Clark's broadcast, and already the massive flagship Vigilant was surrounded by the full might of Earth's warships, hundreds of battlecruisers, frigates, and destroyers, all in perfect formation. Each ship hummed with an energy unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Alex stood at the bridge's command center, her eyes fixed on the holographic map flickering in front of her. A map that detailed the vast expanse of space, now lit up with the signatures of approaching enemy fleets. Her jaw tightened as she glanced at Kieran, her loyal first officer. He stood next to her, monitoring the incoming communication channels, his usual composure now tempered with concern. Intel confirms the Council's response is already on its way, Kieran reported, his voice steady but laced with an underlying tension. A fleet of over 3,000 ships. We're outnumbered. Alex nodded, unfazed. Doesn't matter. This isn't a fight we're losing. Her eyes swept the bridge, meeting the gazes of her crew. Each one of them understood the gravity of their mission, their faces set in a shared resolve. This was no longer just about defending Earth. This was about humanity's place in the galaxy, about showing the galaxy that it couldn't simply push them aside. Humanity would no longer be overlooked. Any updates from Dorian? Alex asked. Kieran hesitated. He's in deep communication with the Council's representatives. But he's not giving anything away yet. He says there's one more piece of the puzzle he has yet to reveal. Alex's fingers drummed lightly on the console. She had come to trust Clark's instincts, but the unknowns of his plan made her uneasy. There were risks, dangers no one fully understood. But in the face of annihilation, there was no other choice but to trust in humanity's will to survive. Suddenly, the ship's alarm blared. A low, ominous hum filled the bridge, signaling the detection of an incoming enemy vessel. Alex's gaze shot to the viewports. Out there, just beyond the hull of Vigilant, the stars were shifting, warping. The enemy fleet had arrived. Alex inhaled sharply, straightening. All ships, prepare for battle. Don't let them reach Earth. No matter what it takes. The words were barely out of her mouth when the first shot rang out, a blinding pulse of energy fired from the alien dreadnoughts. It hit the Vigilant with an ear-splitting impact, shaking the entire ship. Sparks flew across the bridge, alarms flaring. Alex's grip tightened on the armrest, her body tensing. Shields holding. Kieran called over the chaos, his eyes darting between the panels. But only at 50%. Give me more power to the aft shields, Alex barked, turning her attention back to the holomap. Engage evasive maneuvers, all ships. We need to show them they're not the only ones with firepower. The fleet responded in unison. Earth's warships opened fire, their weapons flaring as they launched a barrage of energy blasts and missiles. The first few enemy ships fell, but for every one destroyed, two more seemed to appear in their place, overwhelming the human forces with superior numbers. The battle raged for hours. The Vigilant weaved between the blasts, firing relentlessly. But as the hours passed, Alex felt the weight of the fight pressing on her. The tide was turning. The enemy fleet was far too numerous. Commander. Kieran's voice broke through the din of battle. We can't keep this up much longer. The fleet's taking heavy losses. Alex turned to face him, her heart pounding. But then, just as quickly, she caught sight of something, a faint shimmer in the far distance. Her eyes widened. Wait, what is that? She whispered. The shimmering grew brighter, pulling closer at an unnatural speed. It wasn't a ship, nor was it any weapon she recognized. Instead, it was a burst of energy, like a wave spreading through space. A shockwave, perhaps. But unlike any shockwave she had ever encountered. A soft voice crackled over the comms. "Commander Reynaldo, it's me, Dorian." Alex's breath caught in her throat. It wasn't just a message, he was broadcasting live from the heart of the enemy fleet. "Dorian, what the hell are you doing?" Alex demanded, her voice laced with disbelief. "Hold your fire, Commander," Dorian's voice rang out, calm as ever. "You've done enough. Now let me show the Council what humanity is really capable of." Without warning, the energy burst exploded outward, tearing through space with the force of 1,000 suns. Alex's eyes widened as the light enveloped the enemy fleet in its entirety. Ships disintegrated before her very eyes, their advanced shielding systems no match for the concentrated power of the human force. The battle had shifted in an instant. But Alex knew this wasn't the end. Dorian's gambit had worked, but what was the true cost? What had they unleashed? The truth was, they would find out soon enough. The Council would never forget this day. Alex stood in front of the bridge's viewport, the flickering remnants of the battle still visible on the far side of the fleet. Pieces of broken enemy ships drifted aimlessly, their once imposing shapes now reduced to smoldering debris. But the sense of victory that should have been filling her chest felt empty, replaced by an unease she couldn't shake. Kieran stepped up beside her, his expression unreadable. "It's over," he said softly, his voice thick with disbelief. "The Council's fleet is decimated. They'll never come after us again." "I'm not so sure about that," Alex muttered, her gaze locked on the distant wreckage. "You heard what Dorian said. This isn't just about defending Earth. This is about showing the galaxy that humanity will never bow to anyone." "Then why does it feel like we've opened a door we can't close?" Kieran pressed. Alex didn't have an answer. She had trusted Dorian's plan, had followed him down this path without fully understanding the ramifications. But now, with the battle won, the magnitude of what they had unleashed was sinking in. The comm system crackled, and Dorian's voice filled the room once more. "Commander, it's time." Alex bristled. She hadn't expected to hear from him so soon, especially not after the havoc he had caused. She activated the comm, forcing her tone to remain steady. "What do you mean, Dorian?" "The fleet's gone. The threat's been neutralized." "I said it before," Dorian replied, his voice calm yet brimming with underlying intensity. "This was only the beginning. Now, the real fight starts." Alex's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" "I'm not talking about military might, Commander. I'm talking about power. Power the likes of which the galaxy has never seen. We've shown them our strength, but what we've just unleashed is a signal. A signal to the Council, to the galaxy, that humanity will no longer be a pawn in their games. And now, the truth will come to light." She felt a chill run through her. "What truth?" The line went silent for a moment, before Dorian's voice returned, softer now. "The truth about what you're really dealing with. What humanity has always been capable of." Alex felt the weight of his words settle on her shoulders. She turned to Kieran, his expression matching her own confusion. "Commander?" Kieran said, his voice urgent. "What does he mean by that? What does humanity have that we've never seen before?" Alex shook her head, the answer just out of reach. "I don't know. But I'm about to find out." The ship's lights dimmed, casting the bridge in an eerie, muted glow. Alex felt a shift, like the air itself had grown heavier. She wasn't sure if it was the aftermath of the battle, or if something far more dangerous was coming. "Captain Reynaldo," Kieran said, his voice low. "We've just received a transmission from the Galactic Council. They're requesting a direct meeting with you." Alex stiffened, her hand instinctively reaching for the console. "What do they want?" "They say it's urgent," Kieran replied. "And that it concerns you." Alex felt her pulse quicken. She had always known the Council wouldn't take kindly to humanity's new position in the galaxy. But a direct meeting? That was unprecedented. She gave Kieran a sharp nod, signaling him to proceed. The comm screen flickered to life, and the image of a tall, imposing figure appeared on the display. A high-ranking member of the council, Alex could tell immediately. His expression was one of restrained anger, his face drawn and severe. "You are Commander Alex Reynaldo of Earth, yes?" the figure asked, his voice cold and formal. "I am," Alex replied, her own tone unwavering. "What do you want?" The figure's eyes narrowed. "You have made a grave mistake, Commander. The event you've caused, it is beyond reckoning." Alex's heart skipped a beat. "What are you talking about?" "The power you've unleashed is unlike anything we've ever encountered," the council member continued. "You have no idea what you're truly dealing with. No idea of the consequences." Alex's mind raced. "We've ended the war. The threat is gone." "Not just the war," the council member corrected. "You've drawn the attention of forces far beyond your comprehension. Forces that will never forgive this transgression. You've made a declaration, Commander. And the galaxy will never be the same." The screen cut to static, leaving only the faint hum of the ship's engine. Alex stared at the blank screen, her chest tightening. The tension in the room was palpable, the weight of the council's words sinking in. For the first time since the battle had ended, she truly understood what Dorian had meant. They had broken a boundary. One that could never be undone. A voice from behind broke the silence. "Commander, they're mobilizing." Alex turned to face Kieran. His expression was tight, his eyes filled with grim certainty. "We just started a war," Alex whispered, her voice barely audible. "And it's not one we can win, not alone." Kieran met her gaze, determination flickering in his eyes. "Then we fight, Commander. Together." And as the Vigilant sailed deeper into unknown space, Alex knew that the battle was far from over. The galaxy's response was coming, and it would be the true test of humanity's resolve. Alex didn't need to look at the view screen to know they were being watched. The ship's sensors hummed with the subtle shift of something unseen, a presence moving just beyond the outer perimeter. They were surrounded, more than a dozen enemy vessels, each one creeping closer. "I thought we were done with the council," Kieran muttered, his voice laced with frustration. He stood beside Alex at the helm, fingers lightly tapping the console. His hands shook, but his expression was steely. He had seen things in the past few days that had broken many men, but Kieran had only grown more resolute. "We were," Alex said, her voice sharp as she scanned the data. "But they weren't ready for us to be this strong." She turned her gaze from the cold metal of the viewport to the monitor displaying the fleet's location. The calmness of the moment betrayed the danger they were in. It was almost too quiet, too still. Too predictable. The truth was, they had just fired the first real shot in the galaxy's game of power. Humanity had drawn a line in the sand, but the Council wasn't just going to let them walk away unchallenged. "Commander," Kieran said, his voice tight. "The enemy fleet is locking on. They're preparing to fire." Alex's eyes narrowed. The situation was dire, but there was something almost impressive about how quickly the Council had mobilized. She had to admit, for all their mistakes, their response was efficient. "Do we have any options?" she asked, already knowing the answer. Kieran's lips pressed into a thin line as he studied the readout. "Our shields are almost at full capacity, but we're outnumbered. Even with the Vigilance firepower, we won't make it through unscathed." Alex inhaled slowly, pushing the tension from her body. She couldn't afford to panic, not now. She needed to think clearly. There was a long silence as the two of them stared at the tactical display. Then, without warning, a voice echoed through the comm system, Dorian's voice, cold and unwavering. "Alex, the time has come. The galaxy will not forgive you for what you've done. It's time to unlock humanity's true power. It's time to let them see what we're really capable of." Her stomach clenched. "I've had enough of your cryptic warnings, Dorian," she snapped, frustration creeping into her voice. "What are you suggesting? There is more at play here than you understand." You've awoken something deep within humanity, and if you want to survive, you need to embrace it. Your people can't be mere soldiers anymore. You need to become something more. Something unforgettable. Alex's grip tightened on the console. She had already seen the cost of the power Dorian spoke of. She wasn't sure if they were ready to pay that price, but one thing was certain: if they didn't, there might be no future to fight for. Unlock it, then. Show us what we're truly capable of, Alex muttered under her breath. What was that? Kieran asked, his voice laced with confusion. Alex met his gaze, her expression grim. We're going to change the rules. The ship rocked violently as the first salvo of energy blasts hit their shields, sending a ripple of electricity across the hull. Alex's hands moved instinctively, guiding the ship into evasive maneuvers. They had to hold out long enough for Dorian's plan to unfold, if it could. The next few moments were a blur of blinding lights, high-pitched sirens, and the deep, guttural hum of strained engines. Alex's heart raced as another wave of blasts shook the Vigilant. The shields were beginning to fail. She could feel the tension building in the ship's frame, each second dragging them closer to a potential cataclysm. Brace for impact, she shouted. But before the words left her mouth, a sudden flare of white light engulfed the bridge, bright enough to leave spots in her vision. The ship groaned as it absorbed another direct hit. And then, something happened. The pain in her head was sharp, like 1,000 voices clamoring at once, pushing against the walls of her consciousness. Alex gritted her teeth, but it didn't subside. The energy began to pulse in her chest, like a rhythmic thrum that mirrored her own heartbeat. What is this? Kieran whispered, his face pale as he staggered backward. Alex could barely form a coherent thought. A surge of strength, raw power, washed over her. It was like nothing she had ever felt before, coursing through her body with a ferocity she couldn't control. The ship responded, its weapon systems humming as if recognizing the energy she had unlocked. Commander! Kieran shouted. The energy, it's feeding into the Vigilance weapons. It's amplifying the firepower. She stumbled toward the control panel, pressing her hand against it. The sensation was intoxicating, a flood of power she had never imagined possible. The ship was alive with it. The energy was turning the tide, pushing back the enemy fleet with every pulse. Alex's lips parted in shock as the Vigilant unleashed a barrage of energy unlike anything they had ever fired before. The Council ships around them faltered, their shields collapsing under the intense bombardment. But this was just the beginning. As the enemy forces reeled, Alex knew that humanity's true potential had only just been unlocked, and there would be no going back. A sharp voice cut through her thoughts. We've only got one shot at this. We push now or die trying. Alex's fingers gripped the console, her resolve hardening. She knew the choice was clear. Let's finish this, she said, her voice calm, but her heart pounding with the weight of what was to come. The battle had only just begun.